USP Terre Haute, the death house of the federal system. Subscribe if you think justice always tells the truth. Like if you believe the system never makes mistakes. And comment right now, because what happened inside this prison will make you question everything. The execution was scheduled for 11:59 p.m. Everything about it was precise, controlled, documented down to the second. At USP Terre Haute, the federal government's only active execution facility, there was no room for error, no room for uncertainty. But at 11:42 p.m., something went wrong. The phone rang inside the control room. It wasn't supposed to. All external lines were cut off during an execution protocol. No interruptions, no distractions. Yet the phone kept ringing, sharp, insistent. Warden James Caldwell stared at it, his expression tightening. Who authorized that line? No one answered, because no one had. The room was filled with witnesses, legal observers, medical staff, and federal officers. Every person in that room had been vetted, cleared, accounted for. Nothing about this night was supposed to be unpredictable. And yet, the phone kept ringing. Caldwell stepped forward and picked it up. "Control," he said firmly. A pause. Then a voice. Low, calm. "You are about to execute the wrong man." The words landed like a detonation. Caldwell's grip tightened. "Identify yourself." "I don't have time," the voice replied. "You need to stop the execution. Now." Caldwell glanced at the clock. 11:43 p.m. 16 minutes. "This line is secure," Caldwell said. "No one should be able to call in." "Exactly," the voice said. "Which means you should be listening." Caldwell's jaw clenched. "If this is some kind of interference." "It's not," the voice cut in. "Look at the file. Case ID 9-47B. You missed something." The line went dead. Caldwell stood there for a moment, the receiver still pressed to his ear, then slowly lowered it. "What was that?" one of the federal marshals asked. Caldwell didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned to his assistant. "Pull the file. 9-47B. The assistant hesitated. "Sir, we're minutes away." "Do it." The room shifted. Subtle but noticeable. The kind of tension that spreads when something doesn't feel right. The condemned inmate, Evan Cole, sat in the adjacent chamber, strapped to the gurney, separated from them by thick, reinforced glass. He hadn't said a word in the last hour. Not to the guards. Not to the chaplain. Not even to his own attorney. Just silence. Complete silence. As if he already knew something they didn't. The file appeared on the screen. Caldwell scanned it quickly. Conviction. Federal homicide. Evidence. Conclusive. DNA match. Witness testimony. Digital trail. Everything clean. Everything airtight. "Sir," the assistant said, "there's nothing here." Caldwell frowned. Because the voice hadn't sounded uncertain. It hadn't sounded desperate. It had sounded sure. "Expand the timeline," Caldwell said. The assistant pulled up additional records. Movements. Transfers. Interrogations. Then, a gap. Caldwell leaned closer. "What is that?" "Looks like missing data," the assistant said. 3-hour window during initial custody. "That's not possible. System says the file was overwritten." Caldwell's stomach tightened. Overwritten. Not deleted. Replaced. "Who has clearance to alter federal case records?" he asked. "Only top-level authorization," the assistant replied. Caldwell's mind raced. That kind of access didn't just happen. It was controlled, tracked, documented, unless someone had buried it. The clock ticked. 11:47 p.m. 12 minutes. Caldwell turned toward the observation window. Evan Cole sat motionless, eyes forward, unblinking. Then, slowly, he turned his head and looked directly at Caldwell, through the glass, through the layers of control. And for the first time that night, he smiled. Not wide, not obvious, just enough. Caldwell felt a chill run down his spine. "Delay the procedure," he said. A murmur spread through the room. "You can't do that without federal approval," one of the officials protested. "Then get it," Caldwell snapped. "We don't have time." "Make time." The room erupted into controlled chaos. Phones activated. Channels opened. Protocols bent, but not broken. Not yet. Caldwell stepped away from the window, his mind locked on one question. Who made that call? And how did they know? The assistant spoke again. Sir, there's something else. Caldwell turned. What? The overwritten segment, it's not empty. Then what is it? The assistant hesitated, then said, it's been replaced with a different file. Caldwell's pulse spiked. Show me. The screen shifted. New data appeared. Different timestamps. Different locations. Different identifiers. But the same name. Evan Cole. That's not possible, Caldwell said. The assistant shook his head. It's like there are two versions of him. One file showed a clean arrest, a clear chain of evidence, a straightforward conviction. The other didn't. It showed a different timeline, different movements, different witnesses, and one critical difference, an alibi. Caldwell stared at the screen. That would have cleared him, he said quietly. The assistant nodded. Then why wasn't it in the original file? No one answered. Because no one had an answer. The clock ticked again. 11:51 p.m. 8 minutes. Caldwell's mind raced through possibilities. Clerical error. System failure. Data corruption. But none of those explained the phone call. None of those explained the certainty in that voice. Trace the call, he ordered. The technician worked quickly, then froze. Sir, what is it? The technician looked up. It didn't come from outside. Caldwell's chest tightened. Then where? The technician swallowed. It came from inside the facility. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. That's not possible, Caldwell said. All internal lines were shut down. I know, the technician said. But the signal originated from a restricted zone. Which zone? The technician hesitated. Then answered. The death house. Caldwell's blood ran cold. Because there was only one place inside Terre Haute known by that name. The execution block, where inmates were held before they were put to death. And there was only one person currently assigned to that block. Evan Cole. Caldwell turned slowly back toward the observation window. Cole was still there, still strapped down, still silent. But now, his eyes were locked on Caldwell. And this time, there was no doubt. He wasn't just watching. He was waiting. Caldwell stepped closer to the glass. Heart pounding. Mind racing. Because the question wasn't just who made the call anymore. It was how. How does a man strapped to a gurney, locked inside the most controlled room in the federal system, make a phone call? The assistant's voice broke through the silence. Sir, the execution clock. Caldwell didn't respond. Because in that moment, he realized something far worse than a corrupted file. Far worse than a mysterious call. This wasn't a mistake. It was a setup. And as he looked into Evan Cole's eyes one more time, he understood the truth. They weren't about to execute the wrong man. They were about to execute the only man who knew what was really happening. And just as Caldwell turned back toward the control room, the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then, everything went dark. The call from inside. Darkness swallowed the room in an instant. For a fraction of a second, no one moved. Then the emergency lights snapped on, dim cold, casting everything in a pale blue haze that made the room feel smaller, tighter, more dangerous. Voices overlapped. What just happened? Backup systems should have kicked in instantly. Check the main grid. Warden Caldwell didn't join the panic. He was already moving. Status on the execution chamber, he said sharply. A technician glanced at the monitor, now flickering back to life. Feeds unstable, trying to stabilize. Now, the screen cleared. Evan Cole was still there, strapped down, exactly where he had been. But something was different. His head was tilted slightly now, and his eyes, they weren't fixed forward anymore. They were angled toward the ceiling, like he was listening. Caldwell felt it again. That same chill. Get me internal comms, he ordered. They're offline, the technician replied. Whatever caused the outage, it disrupted the network. Caldwell clenched his jaw. Then we do this manually. He turned to the nearest officer. You're with me. We're going to the death house. A murmur rippled through the room. Sir, protocol says. I know what protocol says, Caldwell cut in. And right now, protocol isn't explaining how a man in restraints made a call from a dead line. No one argued after that. Because no one could. The hallway leading to the execution block felt colder than the rest of the prison. Not physically. Something else. Like the air itself carried weight. Caldwell walked fast, boots echoing off concrete walls. His escort just behind him. The emergency lights flickered overhead, casting shadows that moved just enough to feel alive. You ever see anything like this? The officer asked quietly. Caldwell didn't answer. Because if he did, the truth would have been worse than silence. No, he hadn't. They reached the reinforced door leading into the death house corridor. It was sealed, locked tight. The access panel blinked red. Override it, Caldwell said. The officer entered his credentials. Denied. Try again. Denied. Caldwell stepped forward, entering his own clearance. Denied. His stomach tightened. That's not possible. This door doesn't lock out the warden, the officer said. Exactly. Caldwell stared at the panel. Then something caught his eye. A small indicator light. Green. Wait, he said. What? The system says the door is unlocked. The officer frowned. But it's not opening. Caldwell reached out, placed his hand on the handle, and pushed. The door swung open instantly. Both men froze. Because that meant only one thing. The system thought the door had never been closed. The corridor beyond was silent. Too silent. No guards. No movement. Just a long stretch of reinforced walls leading toward the execution chamber. Where's everyone? The officer whispered. Caldwell didn't respond. His eyes were already scanning the space. Every door. Every corner. Something was wrong. Not chaotic. Not violent. Organized. Controlled. They moved forward cautiously. Halfway down the corridor, they found the first sign. A radio. On the floor. Still on. Still transmitting static. Caldwell picked it up. Control respond. Nothing. Just static. He clipped it to his belt. Keep moving. They reached the holding cells. Empty. Every single one. The officer stopped. That's not possible. There were 3 inmates scheduled this week. Not tonight, Caldwell said. Only one matters tonight. They continued toward the execution chamber. The door was closed. The observation window dark. Caldwell stepped closer. Something fell off. He couldn't explain it. But he knew. He placed his hand on the door. Cold. Too cold. Open it, he said. The officer hesitated. Sir, open it. The door unlocked with a mechanical click. Caldwell pushed it open slowly. The room inside was dimly lit. The gurney was there. The restraints. The medical equipment. Everything exactly where it should be. Except no one was inside. Caldwell's breath caught. Where is he? The officer stepped forward. That's impossible. He was just. Check the restraints. The officer moved closer, examined the leather straps, then looked back. They're still secured. Caldwell frowned. What? They were never unfastened. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. How do you remove a man without touching the restraints? Caldwell asked quietly. The officer didn't answer. Because there was no answer. Caldwell stepped further into the room. His eyes scanned every inch. Then he saw it. The phone. Sitting on a small metal table near the wall. An internal line. The same type used in the control room. His pulse spiked. That's it, he said. He walked toward it slowly. Each step felt heavier than the last. The officer stayed back. Watching. Waiting. Caldwell reached the table. The phone was still. Silent. Normal. He stared at it for a moment. Then picked it up. No dial tone. Nothing. Just dead air. He lowered it slightly. And then it rang. Loud. Sharp. Explosive in the silence. Caldwell flinched. The officer raised his weapon instinctively. The phone kept ringing. Caldwell hesitated. Then answered. Who is this? A pause. Then. A voice. Calm. Controlled. You're running out of time. Caldwell's grip tightened. Where is he? Another pause. Then. Where he's always been. That doesn't make sense. It will. Caldwell's voice hardened. If this is some kind of manipulation. It's not, the voice interrupted. It's a correction. A chill ran through Caldwell. Correction of what? The answer came slowly, deliberately. The record. Caldwell's mind snapped back to the file. The overwritten data. The second timeline. You're talking about Cole's case, he said. I'm talking about the truth. Then tell me where he is. Silence. Then, look behind you. Caldwell turned instantly. The officer was still there. Room unchanged. Empty. He turned back to the phone. Enough games. Another pause. Then, you already saw it. Caldwell froze. Because in that moment, something clicked. The restraints. Still fastened. Untouched. The system logs. Unchanged. The door. Never registered as opened. A realization hit him like a shockwave. He never left, Caldwell whispered. The voice on the phone didn't respond. It didn't need to. Caldwell slowly turned back toward the gurney, toward the straps, toward the place where Evan Cole had been. And that's when he saw it. Not absence. Not emptiness. Something else. A detail he had missed. A detail no one had noticed. Because it wasn't supposed to be there. Caldwell stepped closer, his heart pounding, his breath slowing. Because what he was looking at changed everything. And as he leaned in to see it clearly, the lights flickered again. And the voice on the phone spoke one last time. You weren't supposed to find that. The record they tried to erase. Caldwell didn't move. For a moment, the entire world narrowed to the gurney in front of him. The restraints were still locked, untouched, unbroken, but resting on the surface of a vinyl, right where Evan Cole's chest should have been, was something that didn't belong. A thin, transparent evidence sleeve. Sealed. Perfectly placed. Caldwell's pulse thundered in his ears as he reached for it. Sir, don't, the officer warned. But Caldwell already knew. This was why the call had come. This was what they weren't supposed to see. He picked it up carefully. Inside the sleeve was a single sheet of paper, folded once. Caldwell opened it slowly. His eyes scanned the contents. And then, everything changed. What is it? The officer asked. Caldwell didn't answer immediately. Because he couldn't. The document wasn't handwritten. It wasn't a note. It was official. Stamped. Filed. A federal document. Case ID 9-47B. But not the version they had. This one was different. The timestamps matched the missing 3-hour window. The overwritten section. And in bold, unmistakable lettering. Subject exonerated. Evidence recanted. The officer stepped closer. That's impossible. Caldwell's voice came out low. No, it's not. His mind raced. The second file. The overwritten data. The phone call. This wasn't corruption. This was a replacement. A deliberate one. Someone buried this, Caldwell said, and replaced it with a conviction. The officer frowned. But why? Caldwell looked back at the document, at the signatures, at the authorization stamp. His stomach dropped. Because he recognized it. Not the name. The clearance level. Top tier. Above even his authority. This wasn't a mistake, Caldwell whispered. This was ordered. The lights flickered again, then steadied. The room felt colder now, heavier, as if the truth itself had weight. Caldwell folded the document carefully, sliding it back into the sleeve. We stopped the execution, he said. The officer nodded quickly. Yes, sir. Caldwell turned toward the door and froze because someone was standing there, blocking the exit. A man in a dark suit. No uniform. No badge visible. Just stillness. Watching. How did you get in here? Caldwell demanded. The man didn't respond. Instead, he stepped forward slowly, measured, controlled. You weren't supposed to find that, he said. The same voice. From the phone. Caldwell's grip tightened on the evidence sleeve. Who are you? The man stopped a few feet away, close enough now for Caldwell to see his face. Calm. Unreadable. I'm the one who tried to stop this, he said. Tried. Caldwell shot back. You could have shut it down. The man shook his head. Not from the outside. A pause. That's why I had to bring it in. Caldwell's eyes narrowed. Bring what in? The man glanced at the sleeve in Caldwell's hand. The truth. Silence settled between them. Heavy. Unavoidable. Caldwell stepped closer. Then, explain this. Explain how a man strapped to a gurney disappears without a trace. The man's expression didn't change. He didn't disappear. Then where is he? The answer came without hesitation. Where he was always meant to be. Caldwell's patience snapped. That doesn't mean anything. It will, the man said. Then he nodded toward the gurney. Look again. Caldwell hesitated. Then turned back. His eyes scanned the surface. The straps. The equipment. The empty space where Evan Cole had been. And then, he saw it. Not absence. Presence. Subtle. Almost invisible. A faint indentation in the vinyl. The shape of a body. Still there. As if something was occupying the space. But couldn't be seen. Caldwell's breath caught. What is that? The officer stepped back. Sir. The man in the suit spoke quietly. They erased him. Caldwell turned sharply. What? Not just from a record, the man said. From the system. Caldwell shook his head. That's not possible. Everything in this facility runs through digital control, the man continued. Identity, movement, monitoring. If you remove someone from the system. He let the sentence hang. Caldwell finished it. They don't exist. The realization hit like a blow. No records. No logs. No presence, Caldwell said. Exactly. Caldwell looked back at the gurney. At the indentation. At the invisible shape that shouldn't be there. You're saying he's still here, he whispered. The man nodded. Physically, yes. But the system can't see him. The officer's voice shook. Then how do we? You don't, the man cut in. That's the point. Caldwell's mind raced. They were going to execute him, he said slowly. The man nodded. And once it was done, there'd be no trace he was ever innocent. Silence. Caldwell felt something twist in his chest. Not fear. Something worse. Understanding. Who authorized this, he asked. The man didn't answer right away. Then he said, the same people who control the record. Caldwell's jaw tightened. Names. The man shook his head. You don't get names. Then what do I get? The man looked at him. Then at the evidence sleeve. You get a choice. Caldwell frowned. What choice? Walk away, the man said. Let the execution proceed. Let the record stay clean. A pause. Or stop it and become part of the problem. Caldwell's eyes hardened. Stopping an execution of an innocent man is the problem. The man's expression didn't change. It is if the system decides it is. The weight of that statement settled heavily. Because Caldwell understood exactly what it meant. This wasn't about justice. It was about control. And control didn't tolerate disruption. The lights flickered again. The monitors in the room suddenly came to life. Camera feeds. Data streams. System logs. All active. All watching. Caldwell looked around. They're seeing this. The man nodded. They've been seeing it. The officer took a step back. Sir, what do we do? Caldwell didn't answer immediately. He looked at the gurney. At the invisible shape. At the life that was about to be erased completely. Then he looked at the evidence in his hand. The truth. The real record. And he made a decision. We stop it, he said. The man studied him for a moment. Then gave a small nod. Then you need to move fast. Caldwell turned toward the exit. But before he could take a step, the lights went out again. Complete darkness. And, this time, they didn't come back on. In the silence, a new sound emerged. A mechanical hum. Low, steady, familiar. The execution system. Activating. Caldwell's heart slammed against his chest. They started it, the officer said, panic rising. Caldwell tightened his grip on the evidence sleeve. No, he said. They're finishing it. And somewhere in the darkness, a final system message flashed, unseen by human eyes. Subject status. Executed. But inside the chamber, the indentation on the gurney didn't disappear. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one.